approved. I'd ask for everyone to please turn all mobile phones to silent mode. Please be aware that a hearing loop is available in the council chamber and staff members are available to assist you. Please remain quiet during the meeting so everyone can hear. Anyone disrupting the meeting may be asked to leave. I'd like to remind everyone that planning meetings do not have public question time. If you would like to submit a public question, please refer to the information available on Council's website or contact customer service. The City of Casey acknowledges that we are on the traditional land of the Bunurong and Wurundjeri people and we pay our respect to all elders past and present. Are there any apologies this evening? I have an apology from Councillor Stapleton, Councillor Ablett and Councillor Soray. Is there a mover and a second to accept the apologies of those councillors? Moved by Councillor Flannery, second by Councillor Rowe. If there is no dissent, then that item is carried. Is there a mover and seconder to confirm the minutes of the planning meeting held Tuesday 8 May 2018? Moved by Councillor Rowe, seconded by Councillor Flannery. Is there any dissent? If there is no dissent, then that item is carried. Does any councillor have any conflict of interest or personal interest that they wish to declare? Interest must be declared immediately before consideration of any item as well. There are no conflicts of interest declared this evening. Are there any items which councillors wish to have withdrawn for further discussions? I'll be withdrawing 7.1. If there are no other withdrawals, is there a mover and seconder to adopt the recommendations contained in item 1.1 and 2.1? Moved by Councillor Rowe, seconded by Councillor Flannery. If there is no dissent, then that item is carried. We move on to item 7.1, which is moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Flannery. Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Councillors, shortly on the screen before you, we will see a couple of graphs. The graphs are to note what the Planning Department has been doing over the last few months. And I really just want to highlight some things to all the councillors of what's been happening. As you recall, councillors, last year we decided that all these planning reporting be come back to us on a bi-monthly basis. And what I want to really do is congratulate the Planning Department and the entire team of the exceptional work that they have done since that time. Councillors, in the last 4 months, our officers have made 579 decisions. That's the largest amount of decisions ever made by this council in that space of time. Our statutory days are reduced to 41 and the total number of days are now at 97. If you recall, they were in the vicinity of, I think, 150, 160 only in October last year. So to get that number down to 97 is astonishing. And also, what is really important is that our live applications, so the applications that are currently sitting in before council to make decisions, has reduced from 560 to 396. So that's an overall reduction of 30%. We're always going to have live applications in the Planning Department. That's the nature of the beast. But to get it reduced by 30% really, enables the planners to sort of keep and continue on top of it as they are. This has been no easy feat, and I think we should firstly thank Steve, our acting CEO, who I know has been really helpful to the planners in ensuring they have the resources, together with David Wilkinson and the entire planning department, but also to Duncan, who's helped and designed and led the Surge team, which has been led by Lauren Richardson as well, and to the entire team. It is fantastic to see where we're at and where we have come from and what we have done. So really, from every councillor to our entire planning department, and Duncan, please pass our feedback back to the entire department. So thank you very much for that. If there is no dissent, then that item is carried. Ladies and gentlemen, I hereby declare that the planning meeting is closed.
Very good. That's a good question.
Oh, okay, yeah, that should make sense, doesn't it?
Oh, well, we've got to talk to Craig quickly then before we go to briefing.
Going to the briefing now, you, or is it going to take longer than
It'll take probably about 30 minutes.
We can be late.
We can be
Well,
late.
I'm happy to shoot whenever.
We can be late for the GP. Yeah, we can be late.
Yeah, I'll just need to set up.
This morning.
general purpose meeting and remind that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed. I would like to ask everyone to please turn off all mobile phones to silent for the duration of the meeting. Please be aware the hearing loop is available. Staff members are able to assist with any of this at any time during the meeting. Please remain quiet in the gallery so everyone can hear the meeting. Anyone disrupting the meeting may be asked to leave. I would like to remind everyone that general purpose meetings do not have public question times. If you would like to submit a public question, please refer to the information available on council websites or council customer service. City of Casey acknowledges the traditional custodians of this land, the Bunurong and Wurundjeri people, and pays its respect to all elders past and present. Any apologies? There's Councillor Castani.
Mr Chair, Councillor Surrey, Councillor Rowe and Councillor Flannery.
No, that's me.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor
Ablett.
Ablett.
That's the one.
And-
You're definitely here. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Is there a movement?
So transparent, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a movement seconded to accept the apologies of councillors? Moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Aziz. That is carried. Thank you. Declarations by councillors. I'm starting to get used to this. Declarations by councillors and any conflict of interest, personal interest pursuant to Section 79 and 79B of the Local Government Act 1989, the Act, in any items of the notice paper. Does any councillor have a conflict of interest or personal interest that they wish to declare? No. Interest must also be declared immediately before consideration of an item. Before we move to the office report, I would like to remind everyone that the General Purpose Committee is an advisory committee and no monetary funds can be committed at these meetings. Right, before we start, Council would like to acknowledge Josh to the Council. Josh is here with work experience and he's been brought in by Councillor Cristani. We welcome you, Josh. As I said, Councillor Smith and I and Councillor Jackson had the pleasure of meeting you at Federation University when you gave your speech on your innovation to the water PhD levels, and I think your school won. And Councillor Smith was one of the judges, so yeah, we acknowledge that you're here tonight and we thank you for coming and hope you learned something from it. And I also believe that Josh is in Narry Warren, so he said he wants to run for council one day, but hope it's when I leave. Okay, there's one presentation tonight. Item 1, can I ask Mr John Bellis from RecLink to come down to the lectern? John, you have 10 minutes for your presentation. Thank you.
Well, firstly, thank you, councillors, for inviting me to do a presentation on a proposal which was submitted to council for consideration. I'll just turn the little duver on and see how we go. Red button. That way. Okay, so I'll pull it on. So RecLink Australia has over a number of years, for those councillors who would be aware, we've been engaged in dialogue with council to look at ways in which we can bring our model of service delivery to council, and particular to engaging young people who have and currently are disengaged either by current service providers or services currently available in the community. This is just a brief outline of our national footprint to indicate the scale of programs that we offer, certainly across Australia and also across cultural groups as well. So central to our model is this idea that participation, partnerships and pathways is an important way of engaging young people who've been disengaged over a considerable period of time. As I've mentioned, these are not young people who would ordinarily present to existing programs, YMCA programs or other programs available by existing service providers, including mental health or drug and alcohol providers. These are young people who, because of their personal predicaments, have remained isolated and have been very hard to reach in the community. So we engage some of the most disadvantaged in our community. We deliver evidence-based sport and recreation programs, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. And importantly, what we do is provide low-cost, no-cost programs for participants, because we know that one of the biggest inhibitors of participation in sport and recreation is the cost of those programs, particularly to single-parent families or families who have either been underemployed or have been unemployed. We work in partnership with community agencies, and I'll talk a little bit about that model, which is important given that often people who are disadvantaged tend to experience and have access to multiple service providers in the community. We create socially inclusive and life-changing opportunities, and again, I'll expand a little bit about that as a result of the recent research undertaken by La Trobe University outlining the benefits of our programs. And of course, the programs are really focused on providing positive health outcomes, and they are purposeful in terms of creating pathways to re-enter education and employment opportunities. Central in our model is the person. So rather than talking about the person in terms of being delivered via a particular funded or program stream, be it mental health or drug and alcohol or community health or other sorts of funded stream programs, what we have found is that by having the person central and then working in partnership with multiple community agencies, multiple service providers, we have found that there's been greater impact, and the research undertaken by La Trobe University more recently bears this out. And as you can see, some of the providers that are important in terms of creating a comprehensive partnership includes drug and alcohol providers, mental health providers, police and correctional services. Of course, existing sport and recreation providers are also important in terms of creating those pathways to structured teams available in the community, schools, training organisations, employment providers, and our own staff working with, in collaboration with those existing services. So the proposal that's been put to Council is effectively the entrance point for a RecLink program. And what we have found is for those young people that have been disengaged, the soft door to engaging those young people is through having innovative pop-up sports, street games and recreation programs. This concept is not new, but it is new, relatively new to Australia. In the UK, our partner organisation that we've been working with, Street Games UK, has done an incredible job in being able to deliver innovative programs in situ, in the community, and in facilities which are not traditionally or structured facilities that would be delivered. You would deliver a range of programs. And so working on that, and also from our experiences, we've developed a much better understanding of the importance of engaging initially young people through this concept of pop-up sports. It'll create an immediate engagement, and the concept is delivering a range of formal and informal programs where close to where people live. The program's also very targeted to specific communities or specific areas in the community where we know collectively there's a high level of need. And importantly, those programs would be no cost and low cost. And where I'm referring to low cost, what's been proposed in the proposal is to include a small budget to enable the person delivering the program, the RecLink Sport Coordinator, to purchase or have access to some existing programs which I know Council offers through a range of recreation facilities and leisure centres. The program also is highly flexible, so it means that rather than investing an awful lot of money in a particular area, we know that through the flexibility and the uptake of the program, we can change or we can adapt that program to make sure that it's well focused. And importantly, the program establishes pathways to existing sport and recreation programs, and beyond that, of course, establishing ongoing activities beyond the funded period. And when I've mentioned that the first point of entry is pop-up sports, the second level in this model is engaging young people with existing services, so we're not looking at replicating existing programs. and then further to that, engaging people with existing structured programs. And La Trobe University report found that structured programs offered the greatest level of positive impact in terms of changing a young person's life and providing them with the social network for them to be able to sustain themselves in the community. In 2008, Reclink Australia embarked on a landmark longitudinal study using sport and recreation. It's the first of its kind, and the scale of it, I don't believe, has been replicated since then. 274 participants in the Reclink program were followed by La Trobe University over 4 consecutive years. And what La Trobe University found was that there was conclusive evidence, compelling evidence, that the programs that we offered in the model that we were able to deliver, it was able to break down barriers of isolation, assist in establishing and maintaining friendships, alleviating boredom, develop self-esteem and confidence, provide a sense of community, and acquiring life skills to increase employment opportunities. What that particular study didn't actually articulate, which has been undertaken more recently by La Trobe, is what's the social return on investment. And the SROI framework is a well understood framework where programs, social programs, are analysed to look at their social impact in a community based on a range of areas, and I'll cover a number of those. But effectively what it found was that for every $1 invested in a structured program that Reclink Australia provided, in the model that we provided, it provided $8.94 return on investment. And that investment was articulated in terms of savings through a number of areas where increased social connectedness and well-being and mental health, for example, in itself doesn't have a saving. What the savings that were able to identify in that particular area was reduction in mental health admissions. Employment outcomes were fairly clear because participants were asked at the end of the program what was their employment outcomes, and they were able to be quantified. Personal development, skill development related to going through to and participating in formal programs, education programs or certificate programs, which enabled then those young people to move towards employment. Of course, the opportunity to access support for high-risk behaviour was seen as an important mechanism, particularly for very vulnerable young people and at-risk young people. Behaviours such as gambling, which was an interesting insight for us, and decrease in risk of suicidal thoughts and behaviour, which we understood before, were also identified as part of the social return on investment impact. Improved physical health and a decrease in high-risk alcohol and drug behaviour in the community, and of course crime reduction. This particular study was led by 3 professorial researchers, each independently interviewing certainly at least a couple of hundred of participants, and including those people and those agencies supporting it. So it was a very robust study, and what it found mirrored the previous 4-year longitudinal study that I've just recently spoken about. So some of the...
Sorry, John, would you like an extension of time for 5 minutes?
I'm just about ready to complete.
All right, I'll give you 2 minutes. Moved by Councillor Cristani, seconded by Councillor Rosario. You've got 5 minutes. Thanks, John.
Thank you. Okay. So one of the things that we've been wanting to also understand is, what's the voice of the participant? What are they telling us about the way in which they've participated in the programs and the impact of those programs? And I have just simply put in this little presentation just some of the comments and some of the feedback, and it really is compelling when I see and when I read feedback directly from individuals and how those changes have impacted not only their own lives but also their families or their social network or the people that they socialise with. Importantly, areas such as reduction in drug and alcohol dependence, being able to use a range of programs, a range of activities which which are not currently available. And I just want to get back to the point, councillors, that I've raised before. This is not for young people who currently are enjoying the fantastic facilities and amenities which council offers. And the City of Council needs to be and should be commended for their incredible foresight in developing some world-class facilities in your community. This is for young people who are completely marginalised and who are under the radar, but are being picked up through police or correctional services, drug and alcohol and mental health service providers and the like. So one of the things that we at RecLink is putting forward is a recommendation to implement an innovative program to help kickstart the engagement of young people in three key areas. That includes Doveton, Umemmering, Hampton Park and Cranbourne. And I know Cranbourne is a large area, but we would work with council to identify those locales or localities where there's a high pocket of need in the community. I won't just call it disadvantage, but I know that there's a high levels of needs. So councillors, I've put forward to you now my presentation. I would be obviously available, Councillor Flannery, for any questions.
Thank you, John, for your presentation. I just, before I go to Councillor Rosario, then Councillor Castani, my question is, look, pardon my ignorance, the RecLink is a non-for-profit organisation or use got government funding?
Yes, we're a not-for-profit organisation. We receive funding from federal government, from state governments, from local cities or local councils. So we do receive funding from a diverse range of sources. We also raise our own funds through a range of national events called the RecLink Community Cups. And for anyone who loves Triple R and PBS, they have the Megahertz. And of course, the Megahertz is a football team along with the Rock Dogs, which is a team made up of musicians. They play an annual charity match and we raise funds through that. The funds go back then to supporting the range of programs that we deliver in the community.
Thank you, John. Councillor Rosario.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your presentation, John. It's really great to hear it from the source. I'm not sure you're aware of this, but our Mayor, Jeff Ablett, speaks very highly of RecLink, and for years he's been talking a lot about it and is in full support. And it's good to hear, though, the details straight from you as the CEO. Some of the areas you mentioned, Doveton, Umemmering and Hampton Park are actually Council Smith and my area, my ward. And I'd be keen to hear more about what you could do in that space. And so my question is, what can we do in terms of...
Well, I think what's been proposed is to provide a program which creates immediate engagement with those young people, the people who have experienced intergenerational disadvantage. I know it's probably not a term that is used often, but certainly people who have grown up in families where, for whatever reason, the families have been disadvantaged and their kids and, of course, other extended families haven't been adequately engaged. So we identify those. The sort of programs that we have offered would be based on also our learnings as well. In 2016, the Sport and Rec Victoria funded a pilot program, effectively using the pop-up pilot concept in 3 communities. The communities were Norlane, Corio and West Heidelberg. And one of the things that we did as an organisation is something different and something more innovative, and that is we went out, we went and door knocked, we spoke to the community, we spoke about what we were doing, and we prepared and developed a range of programs with those people that we've also spoken to in the localities. The programs were delivered over a 4-week period, and they were delivered in a range of different areas. At that time, the funding that we received as a pilot program was to deliver programs not in structured facilities. And the ground rules were they couldn't be at the same place, they couldn't be at the same time, they couldn't be in the same day, and they had to be a range of different programs. And across that intensive 4-week program, we were able to engage about 320 people. 80% of those were not engaged or involved in existing programs which the community offered. So in my presentation, in my proposal, I've put forward a range of different sort of programs, and I'm happy to go into some detail if you would like, Councillor, as well.
Yeah, and one final one, Mr. Chairman. Resources, though, like do you need a facility or that sort of stuff? Like what do you need to actually run these sort of programs?
Well, I think this program that's been proposed is in fact to be highly flexible and to bring the program as close as possible to where people live. And that will require consultation with council as to what are the permissible areas that could be used in order to create some engagement with young people close to where they live. So we wouldn't be talking about a structured program like a footy engagement program, but it might be a range of different activities which we can actually run in a park and have that park facility as a local or location to engage people. We want to try and reduce for people in Doveton and Newmemmering the need for them to travel, because we also recognise that not every family will have a second car, for example, to bring their young people to the program. And by having programs close by, they will be free. And in so doing, what we want to try and do is not only engage them, but also create that dialogue, engage them in some important dialogue about what else is available for them within the community. And, you know, we could drop leaflets at houses, and we know that even that won't be read. So what we are proposing is a more intensive program in those key localities, those key neighbourhoods, literally going door by door, talking about the program and engaging young people. So it's quite a different program, and hence the structure of the program proposed.
Thank you, Councillor Rosario. Councillor Castani.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, John, for your presentation and also for your service to the community. Some very important service. So it's so widespread across Australia, I believe. Yes.
That's right. Thank you.
200 locations.
Quite a number of locations.
Yeah. So it's brilliant what you're doing. I know Mayor Ablett has actually been discussing RecLink as long as I've been a councillor, and that's almost 6 years. So he's tried various times to get locations, and I know that's something we can keep working on. So you said that there's a group called Megahertz. Did they get Megahertz? Just wondering. It's a sports club, right?
No, that's
sports
a great one. Well, megahertz, you know, if you look at the hertz, it's Hertz, so it's all about airwaves and getting people, you know, providing people with some wonderful music. So Triple R and PBS, great radio stations, and of course you have a fantastic radio station in Casey yourselves.
Yes, that's right.
Which has been partnering with us over many years in calling out and calling the annual RecLink Grand Final series, which we play at Peanut Farm Reserve. So I thank the council for that.
That's good. Just my last mentioned, and I'm sure you've been informed about our mental health forum that's coming up. Have you?
Yes.
Oh, good. So you're involved in that. That's all right. Because
my staff are. So
yes, of course. Sure.
Yes.
That's all right. Just I know that the Mayor has put that together, and that would be quite a important. So, but thank you very much, and I hope we can continue to assist you.
Thank you.
Question? Okay, if there are no more questions, John, we'd like to say thank you for your presentation. We're sorry Councillor Ablett's not here tonight to see. I'll move it. So, and here we hope all goes well with everything you're trying to achieve. So we're going to move this. So thanks, John. Sorry. Moved by Councillor Rosario, seconded by Councillor Castani. Any dissent? No dissent? That's carried. Thank you. And that brings a conclusion to our general purpose meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, councillors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that it? No more briefings?